The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, and Kemi Adebayo found herself standing next to the man who could fire her with just one word. She clutched her cleaning cart tighter and tried to make herself invisible in the corner. But then something happened that would change both their lives forever. The Billionaire CEO, Marcus Sterling, looked down at a crumpled paper in his hands, and his face went pale. His son's homework assignment was written in a language he couldn't read, and the parent-teacher conference was in 2 hours. That's when he noticed Kemi's eyes light up as she glanced at the paper. "I'll double your pay if you can translate this," he said, desperately not knowing he was about to discover something that would shake his entire world. Kemi Adebayo had been cleaning the floors of Sterling Industries for 3 years, and nobody had ever really noticed her. She worked the night shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. so she could take care of her 8-year-old daughter Nia during the day. Every night she pushed her cart through the empty halls of the 40-story building and cleaned up after people who made more money in a day than she made in a year. But Kemi never complained because this job put food on the table and kept a roof over their heads in their small apartment in Brooklyn. The apartment was tiny with just one bedroom that she shared with Nia, but it was clean and safe, and that was all that mattered. Every morning when she got home from work, she would find Nia still sleeping peacefully, and she would kiss her forehead before crawling into bed for a few hours of rest. By noon she was up again making lunch and helping with homework and being the best mother she could be on 4 hours of sleep and endless determination. She was a single mother who had moved to America from Nigeria when she was just 18 years old, with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. Back home she had been the smartest student in her village and had won a scholarship to study in Lagos. She was studying to become a teacher and spoke 4 languages fluently, but life had other plans. She met her ex-husband David in college, and they fell in love quickly. He promised her the world and convinced her to move to America with him after graduation. They had Nia, but the marriage fell apart when he couldn't handle the responsibility of being a father and husband. He started staying out late and coming home drunk and spending money they didn't have. When Nia was 2 years old, he disappeared completely, leaving Kemi alone in a foreign country with no family and no support system. So here she was at 32 years old, working as a janitor and trying to give her daughter a better life than she had ever imagined for herself. Marcus Sterling was the kind of man who had everything money could buy, but nothing that really mattered. His company was worth billions, and he lived in a penthouse that overlooked Central Park. But his 5-year-old son Ethan was struggling in school, and Marcus didn't know how to help him. His ex-wife Sarah had remarried and moved to California, so Ethan only saw his mother once a month. The little boy was acting out in class, and his grades were getting worse every week. Marcus tried to hire tutors and therapists, but nothing seemed to work. He was failing as a father, and he knew it. The worst part was that he could see Ethan pulling away from him day by day. His bright, happy little boy was becoming quiet and distant, and Marcus felt helpless to stop it. He would come home from 14-hour days at the office to find Ethan already asleep and wake up to find him already at school. They were living in the same house, but they felt like strangers. Marcus had grown up poor in Detroit with a single mother who worked 3 jobs just to keep them afloat. He promised himself he would never struggle like that again, and he had kept that promise by building a business empire that employed thousands of people. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten that success meant more than just money in the bank. His marriage to Sarah had been more like a business merger than a love story, and when it fell apart, he threw himself even deeper into his work. Now he had all the money in the world, but his son was slipping away from him, and he didn't know how to fix it. On that Tuesday night in October, everything changed. Marcus had stayed late at the office trying to finish a presentation for the board meeting the next morning. He was exhausted and stressed when he got into the elevator on the 38th floor. The building was almost empty except for the cleaning crew. That's when Kemi stepped into the elevator with her cart full of supplies. She pressed the button for the 15th floor and stood quietly in the corner, like she always did when she saw one of the executives. She had learned to make herself invisible because rich people didn't like to be reminded that poor people existed. She kept her eyes down and tried not to breathe too loudly because she needed this job and couldn't afford to make anyone uncomfortable. Marcus barely noticed her until he looked down at the paper in his hands. It was Ethan's homework assignment, and it was written in Spanish. The teacher had sent a note saying that Ethan needed help with his bilingual education program, and there would be a parent conference the next day. Marcus spoke 3 languages fluently, including French and Italian from his business dealings, but Spanish wasn't one of them. He had been so busy with work that he didn't even know his son was learning Spanish at school. The parent conference was at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and he had no idea what to say or how to help his son. Now he felt like the worst father in the world. He stared at the paper until the words started to blur together, and he felt a familiar tightness in his chest that meant he was about to have a panic attack. That's when he heard a soft gasp from the corner of the elevator. Kemi had glanced at the paper, and her eyes had gone wide. She could read every word on that page. Back in Nigeria, she had learned English, French, and Spanish, along with her native Yoruba language. In college, she had studied linguistics and dreamed of becoming a translator, or maybe even working for the United Nations. She had been the best student in her program, and her professors had said she had a gift for languages. But life had gotten in the way, and those dreams had been pushed aside by the reality of being a single mother in a foreign country with no support and no connections. "I'll double your pay if you can translate this," Marcus said, suddenly turning to face her. His voice was desperate, and his hands were shaking slightly. He had never spoken to any of the cleaning staff before, but he was willing to try anything. He needed help, and this woman seemed to understand what was written on the paper. Kemi looked shocked that he was even talking to her. She had cleaned his office hundreds of times, but he had never acknowledged her presence. She knew his coffee order by heart because she emptied his trash can every night. She knew he worked late and ate dinner at his desk and talked to his son on the phone every evening at exactly 6:30. She knew he kept a picture of a little boy on his desk and that he sometimes fell asleep at his computer. Now here he was asking for her help, and she didn't know what to say. She looked down at the paper again and saw that it was a story about a little boy who missed his mother. Her heart broke a little because she knew what it was like to feel alone and scared. "Your son wrote about how much he misses someone," she said quietly, her Nigerian accent making her words sound musical. "He says he dreams about flying to see his mama, but he's afraid of the airplane. He wants to be brave, but sometimes he cries at night when nobody can hear him." She paused and looked at Marcus, who had gone completely still. "He wrote that the airplane makes loud noises and he thinks it might crash. But he wants to see his mama so badly that he's willing to be scared." Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the chest. He knew Ethan missed his mother, but he had no idea his son was suffering so much. The little boy had been acting tough around his father, but inside he was falling apart. Marcus sat down heavily on the elevator handrail and put his head in his hands. How could he not know that his own son was having nightmares about airplanes? How could he be so blind to his child's pain? "There's more," Kemi said gently. She had never seen a rich person cry before, and it made her realize that money couldn't fix everything. "He wrote that he loves his daddy very much, but he wishes his daddy wasn't so sad all the time. He wants to make his daddy smile, but he doesn't know how. He says his daddy works very hard to buy him toys, but what he really wants is for his daddy to play with him." Tears started rolling down Marcus's face, and he didn't try to stop them. This woman he had never really seen before had just translated the most important words he had ever heard. His son was trying to take care of him instead of the other way around. What kind of father was he that his 5-year-old boy was worried about making him happy? Ethan didn't need more toys or tutors or therapy. He needed his father's attention and love and time. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, looking up at Kemi with red eyes. "Kemi Adebayo, sir," she replied, still standing respectfully in the corner. Kemi, I need your help, Marcus said, standing up straighter. Not just with translation, but with understanding my son. You have children, don't you? I have a daughter, Kemi said carefully. Her name is Nia, and she's 8 years old. Then you know what I'm doing wrong, Marcus said desperately. Please, I'll pay you anything you want. I need someone who understands children and languages, and I need someone who won't judge me for being such a terrible father. The elevator reached the 10th floor, and the doors opened, but neither of them moved. Kemi looked at this powerful man who was crying in front of a janitor, and she saw something she recognized. He was just as scared and alone as she was. They were both single parents trying their best in a world that seemed designed to make them fail. The only difference was that he had money, and she didn't, but that hadn't protected his child from pain any more than her poverty had protected Nia. Mr. Sterling, Kemi said softly, you're not a terrible father. You're here at 10 o'clock at night trying to understand your son's homework. That makes you a good father who just needs some help. Will you help me? Marcus asked. I know it's crazy to ask someone I just met, but something tells me you're exactly what Ethan and I need right now. Kemi thought about her own daughter sleeping at home with the babysitter Mrs. Chun from next door. She thought about the bills piling up on her kitchen table and the dreams she had given up years ago. She thought about all the nights she had worked in this building watching rich people throw away more food than she could afford to buy. Then she thought about this little boy who was crying himself to sleep and missing his mother and trying to take care of his father's feelings. Yes, sir, I'll help you, she said. But I have conditions. Marcus looked surprised. Nobody ever gave him conditions about anything. In his world, people said yes to whatever he wanted because he paid them enough to make it worth their while. What do you need? I need to keep my regular job because I can't risk losing steady income, Kemi said firmly. And I need to bring my daughter with me sometimes because I can't always find a babysitter. And I want to do this right, which means I need to meet Ethan and understand what he really needs, not just what you think he needs. Done, Marcus said immediately. Anything else? Yes, sir, Kemi said with a small smile. You need to stop calling yourself a terrible father. Ethan loves you, and that's what matters most. Everything else we can figure out together. The next morning, Marcus called in sick to work for the first time in 10 years. Instead, he picked up Ethan from school early and brought him to meet Kemi at a coffee shop near her apartment in Brooklyn. Ethan was suspicious at first because his father had never introduced him to any of his employees before. But Kemi had a way with children that put Ethan at ease immediately. She got down on his level and looked him in the eyes when she talked to him and listened to his answers like they were the most important things in the world. Your daddy told me you're learning Spanish, Kemi said, sitting down next to Ethan with a hot chocolate for him and coffee for the adults. That's very smart because speaking many languages opens up the whole world. I speak 4 languages and it has helped me in so many ways. Are you from somewhere else? Ethan asked with the curiosity that only children have. I'm from Nigeria, Kemi said. That's in Africa, very far away. I came here when I was young, like your daddy brought you here to this coffee shop today. Do you miss it? Ethan asked. Sometimes, Kemi said honestly. But I made a new home here with my daughter, just like you're making a home with your daddy. Home isn't just a place, it's the people who love you. Marcus watched this conversation and realized he had never talked to his son this way. Kemi wasn't talking down to Ethan or trying to entertain him. She was having a real conversation with him, like he was a person worth listening to. No wonder Ethan was struggling if all the adults in his life treated him like he couldn't understand anything complicated. Can I meet your daughter? Ethan asked shyly. I think that would be wonderful, Kemi said, looking at Marcus for permission. Her name is Nia, and she loves to read books and draw pictures. Maybe you could be friends. Over the next few weeks, a new routine developed. Kemi would bring Nia to Marcus's penthouse after school, and the two children would do their homework together while Kemi helped with translations and cultural understanding. But more importantly, she helped Marcus and Ethan learn how to talk to each other. She showed Marcus how to get down on the floor and play with Ethan instead of just watching from the couch. She taught him to ask questions about Ethan's day and actually listen to the answers. She helped Ethan understand that his father's long work hours weren't because he didn't want to spend time with his son, but because he was trying to provide for their family. Marcus discovered that Ethan was brilliant and funny and full of questions about everything. Ethan discovered that his father wasn't always serious and sad, but could laugh and play games and tell stories about when he was little. Nia flourished in the luxury apartment with access to books and art supplies and educational toys that her mother could never afford. She and Ethan became best friends despite their age difference, because they both understood what it was like to have only one parent. One evening while the children were in Ethan's room building a fort out of blankets, Marcus pulled Kemi aside in the kitchen. The penthouse kitchen was bigger than her entire apartment, and she still felt intimidated by all the expensive appliances and marble countertops. But Marcus made her feel welcome and valued in a way she had never experienced before. "I need to ask you something personal," he said. "Why are you working as a janitor when you clearly have so much education and talent? You speak 4 languages fluently, and you understand business better than most of my executives." Kemi looked out the window at the city lights and was quiet for a long moment. She had never told anyone the full story of how she ended up in America or what she had given up to survive. "When I came to America, I had big dreams," she said finally. "I wanted to be a teacher or maybe work at the United Nations as a translator. I had scholarships to graduate school and professors who believed in me. But dreams don't pay rent, and single mothers can't take risks with their children's security." "What happened?" Marcus asked gently. "When David left me, I had no money and no credit and no family to help me," Kemi said. "I was pregnant and alone in a country where I didn't understand how anything worked. I took the first job I could find, which was cleaning office buildings at night. It paid cash and they didn't ask too many questions about my immigration status. By the time I got my paperwork sorted out, I was trapped in a cycle of working to survive with no time or energy left for anything else." "What if you could break out of that cycle now?" Marcus asked. "What if you had security and support to chase those dreams again? Mr. Sterling, you've been very kind to me, but I can't let you just give me things," Kemi said, shaking her head. "I need to earn my way. I've been poor my whole life, and I know that handouts come with strings attached. I can't risk my daughter's future on someone else's generosity." "That's exactly what I'm talking about," Marcus said excitedly. "I want to hire you officially, not as a favor, but because you have skills my company needs desperately. We do business in 12 countries, and we're always struggling with translations and cultural understanding. You could head up our new international communications department and help us expand into African markets." Kemi stared at him in shock. "You want to give me a department to run?" "I want to give you the chance to use your talents," Marcus said. "The same chance someone gave me when I was young and trying to prove myself. The difference is I had connections and mentors, and you're doing this all on your own, which makes you twice as impressive." "What about Ethan?" Kemi asked. "I don't want to stop helping him just when he's starting to open up to his father. Ethan will always be part of this," Marcus said. "In fact, I was hoping you might consider something else too. Your daughter Nia and Ethan are becoming like brother and sister, and they both need more stability in their lives. What would you think about them spending time together like a real family?" Kemi felt her heart racing. Was he suggesting what she thought he was suggesting? She had started to have feelings for Marcus, but she had pushed them down because she knew that rich men didn't fall in love with poor women in real life. That only happened in movies and fairy tales. "Mr. Sterling, I think we should focus on the business arrangement first," she said carefully. "You're right," Marcus said quickly. I'm getting ahead of myself. But Kemi, I want you to know that these past few weeks have been the happiest Ethan has been since the divorce. And honestly, they've been the happiest I've been too. You've brought joy and laughter back into our home, and I don't know how to thank you for that." The next morning, Kemi gave her 2 weeks' notice to the cleaning company and started preparing for her new role at Sterling Industries. But she insisted on finishing out those 2 weeks because she didn't want to leave her co-workers hanging. Marcus respected her even more for that decision. She could have walked away immediately and started her new life, but she honored her commitments to the people who had worked alongside her during the hardest years of her life. On her last night cleaning the building, Kemi stood in the elevator where everything had started and smiled. She was wearing the same uniform and pushing the same cart, but everything had changed. Tomorrow she would come back to this building wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase. She would have her own office on the 25th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a team of translators working under her. More importantly, she would be using her brain and her talents instead of just her hands. But the biggest change was in the relationship she had built. Ethan was thriving in school and had stopped having nightmares about airplanes and his mother. He still missed her, but now he felt secure in his father's love and support. He was learning Spanish faster than any other student in his class because he was excited about communicating with Kemi in her second language. Marcus had learned how to be present for his son instead of just providing for him financially. He left the office at 5 o'clock every day and spent his evenings playing games and reading stories and talking about everything and nothing. And Nia was flourishing too. She had a stable place to do homework every day with access to educational opportunities that Kemi could never have provided on a janitor's salary. She was taking piano lessons and art classes and reading at a high school level. More importantly, she had Ethan as a friend and Marcus as a positive male role model. She still remembered her biological father, but Marcus was showing her what a real father looked like. The first month in her new job was challenging because Kemi had to learn systems and processes that were completely foreign to her. But she was a quick learner, and she brought a fresh perspective that impressed clients and colleagues alike. She understood cultural nuances that her American coworkers missed, and she could communicate with international partners in ways that built trust and rapport. Within 60 days, she had identified 3 new market opportunities that could generate millions in revenue. But success in the corporate world came with its own set of problems. Some of Marcus's business associates whispered that he was showing favoritism to an unqualified employee. Others suggested that their relationship was more than professional. Kemi heard the rumors, and it made her work twice as hard to prove herself. She stayed late and came in early and double-checked every translation and cultural assessment. She knew that people were waiting for her to fail so they could say that Marcus had made a mistake. The pressure was enormous, and there were nights when Kemi would come home exhausted and overwhelmed. Nia could see that her mother was struggling, and it worried her. One evening while they were eating dinner, Nia looked up from her homework and asked, "Mama, are you happy with your new job?" The question caught Kemi off guard because she had been so focused on proving herself that she hadn't stopped to think about whether she was actually enjoying the work. "Why do you ask, baby?" "Because you used to smile more when you came home from cleaning," Nia said with the honesty that only children possess. "Now you look worried all the time." That night, Kemi called her sister, Folake in Nigeria, and talked for 2 hours about everything that had happened. Folake was the only person who really understood what Kemi had been through and what this opportunity meant for their family. "Sister, you have been given a gift," Folake said. "But gifts come with responsibility. You cannot let fear make you forget who you are or where you come from. These people need you to be yourself, not a copy of what you think they want." The next day, Kemi walked into the boardroom for a presentation about expanding into West African markets. Instead of trying to sound like everyone else, she spoke from her heart about the opportunities and challenges of doing business in Nigeria. She talked about the importance of building relationships and understanding local customs. She shared stories from her childhood and explained how cultural misunderstandings could destroy business deals before they even started. The presentation was a huge success and led to Sterling Industries signing their biggest international contract ever. But more importantly, it showed Kemi that she didn't have to choose between being professional and being authentic. She could be both a successful businesswoman and a proud Nigerian woman. She could honor her past while building her future. 6 months later, Sterling Industries won a major contract with a consortium of African businesses, partly because of Kemi's cultural insights and translation skills. She had proven herself as a businesswoman and earned the respect of clients and colleagues around the world. Marcus promoted her to Vice President of International Relations with a salary that allowed her to move Nia to a better school and start saving for college. But more importantly, she had found work that used her gifts and made her feel proud of what she accomplished every day. The real success, though, was measured in smaller moments. Like when Ethan ran up to Kemi at a school play and hugged her tight while calling her his second mom. Like when Marcus and Kemi stayed up late talking about their dreams for their children's futures. Like when Nia told her mother she wanted to be a businesswoman just like her when she grew up. Like when Ethan stopped having anxiety attacks about flying and actually looked forward to visiting his mother because he knew Kemi would help him practice his Spanish before the trip. 1 year after that night in the elevator, Marcus and Kemi were sitting in the same coffee shop where they had first brought Ethan, but this time they weren't talking about homework or business deals. They were planning a wedding. Marcus had proposed on a quiet Sunday morning while they were making breakfast for the children. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture with roses and champagne. It was simple and real and perfect. "Are you sure about this?" Kemi asked, looking down at the beautiful ring on her finger. "People are going to say you're crazy for marrying your employee. They're going to say I'm a gold digger who trapped you. Let them talk," Marcus said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I know what I found that night in the elevator. I found my missing piece, and Ethan found the mother he needed, and Nia found the father she deserved. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about. I never thought I would get a second chance at love," Kemi said with tears in her eyes. "I was so focused on surviving that I forgot about living." "We both forgot," Marcus said. "But our children reminded us what really matters. They showed us how to be a family. The engagement wasn't without challenges." Marcus's mother flew in from Detroit and made it clear that she thought her son was making a mistake. Some of his business partners questioned his judgment. A few gossip magazines ran stories about the Billionaire CEO and his former janitor. But Marcus and Kemi faced every obstacle together and came out stronger on the other side. The wedding was small and perfect, with Ethan as ring bearer and Nia as flower girl. They exchanged vows in Marcus's penthouse with just a few close friends and family members present. Kemi wore a simple white dress that she had bought at a department store, and Marcus wore the same suit he had worn to every important business meeting for the past 5 years. But they had never looked more beautiful or more happy. Marcus's business associates were shocked that he was marrying a former janitor, but they quickly learned to respect Kemi's intelligence and grace. She never forgot where she came from, and she used her position to create opportunities for other immigrants and single mothers who were struggling to build better lives. She started a scholarship program for Nigerian students and a mentorship program for women trying to break into male-dominated industries. The first year of marriage brought its own set of challenges and joys. Blending two families is never easy, even when everyone loves each other. Ethan had to adjust to sharing his father's attention, and Nia had to get used to living in luxury after years of struggling. There were arguments about bedtimes and chores and screen time. There were moments when the children tested boundaries and pushed limits to see if this new family arrangement would really last. But Marcus and Kemi approached every challenge as a team. When Ethan had a meltdown about wanting his biological mother at his birthday party, Kemi held him while he cried and helped him understand that loving her didn't mean he loved his mother any less. When Nia felt guilty about enjoying expensive toys and clothes, Kemi explained that accepting good things didn't make her ungrateful for what they had before. They went to family counseling and learned how to communicate better and support each other through difficult transitions. The breakthrough came 6 months after the wedding when Ethan got sick with the flu. He was running a high fever and couldn't keep food down, and Marcus was traveling for business. Kemi took 3 days off work to nurse Ethan back to health, just like she would have done for Nia. She made him soup and read him stories, and sat by his bed all night, monitoring his temperature. When he was finally feeling better, he looked up at her with big, serious eyes and said, "Thank you for taking care of me like a real mom." That's when Kemi knew they had become a true family. Not because of marriage certificates or shared bank accounts, but because they had chosen to love and protect each other through sickness and health and everyday struggles. En started calling her Mama Kemi and introducing her to his friends as his stepmother with pride instead of confusion. Nia started calling Marcus Dad and asking him to help with math homework and soccer practice. 2 years into their marriage, Kemi discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified because she was 35 years old and hadn't planned on having more children. She worried about how Ethan and Nia would react and whether she could handle the demands of pregnancy while running a department at Sterling Industries. When she told Marcus the news, he picked her up and spun her on the kitchen while laughing and crying at the same time. "We're going to have a baby," he kept repeating like he couldn't quite believe it was real. The children were initially confused but then excited about becoming big siblings. Ethan wanted to know if he could teach the baby Spanish, and Nia wanted to know if she could help pick out clothes and toys. They spent hours discussing potential names and arguing about whether they wanted a brother or sister. For the first time since their divorces, Marcus and Kemi felt like they were building something completely new together instead of just healing from past wounds. The pregnancy was difficult, with morning sickness that lasted all day and exhaustion that made it hard to focus at work. But Kemi was determined to prove that she could be a successful executive and a devoted mother at the same time. She worked from home when possible and brought the children to the office when necessary. Her team at Sterling Industries rallied around her and took on extra responsibilities without being asked. When baby David was born healthy and perfect after 18 hours of labor, the whole family was there to welcome him. Ethan and Nia took turns holding their new brother and promising to protect him forever. Marcus cried harder than he had at either of his previous children's births, because this baby represented hope and new beginnings, in a way that felt miraculous. The first few months with a newborn were exhausting but wonderful. Marcus took paternity leave for the first time in his career and spent weeks learning how to change diapers and give bottles and rock David to sleep. Kemi watched her husband transform into the kind of hands-on father she had always hoped Nia would have. Ethan and Nia helped with feeding schedules and bedtime routines and fought over who got to push the stroller during family walks. But the real test came when Kemi had to return to work after maternity leave. She had built Sterling Industries' international division from the ground up and couldn't afford to be away too long without losing momentum. She arranged for a nanny to come to the house during the day and restructured her schedule so she could work from home 2 days a week. It was a juggling act that required constant adjustments and occasional compromises. There were days when Kemi felt like she was failing at everything. When David was teething and crying all night, and she fell asleep during an important video conference with clients in London. When Nia needed help with a school project, and Ethan had a soccer game, and Marcus was traveling, and the nanny called in sick all on the same day. When her sister in Nigeria got married and she couldn't afford to take time off work to attend the wedding. But there were also days when everything clicked into place perfectly. When David took his first steps during a family picnic in Central Park and all 5 of them cheered like he had just won the Olympics. When Ethan got the lead role in his school play and performed a monologue in perfect Spanish that made the whole audience stand up and applaud. When Nia won a citywide essay contest with a piece about how families can be created in unexpected ways. When Marcus surprised them all with a vacation to Disney World where they spent a week just being tourists and eating too much ice cream and riding roller coasters until they were dizzy with laughter. 5 years after that night in the elevator, the Sterling Adebayo family was featured on the cover of Businessweek magazine as an example of how diversity and inclusion could transform corporate culture. The article talked about Kemi's rise from janitor to vice president and how her unique perspective had helped Sterling Industries expand into new markets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But the real story was about second chances in chosen families and the power of seeing people for who they really are instead of what their circumstances suggest they should be. The magazine photographer wanted to shoot them in Marcus's office, surrounded by awards and diplomas, but Kemi insisted on taking the photos in their home. She wanted people to see them as a real family, not as a corporate success story. So they posed in their living room with toys scattered on the floor and family photos on the mantle and David crawling around in his pajamas. Marcus wore jeans and Kemi wore a simple dress, and the children wore whatever they wanted. It was authentic and beautiful, and perfectly imperfect. The article quoted Kemi saying, "Success isn't about where you start, but about recognizing opportunity when it appears and having the courage to take it, even when you're scared. I spent years thinking that I wasn't good enough or smart enough or connected enough to achieve my dreams. But sometimes all it takes is one person who sees your potential and gives you a chance to prove yourself." Marcus was quoted saying, "The best business decision I ever made was asking for help from someone I had overlooked for years." Kemi didn't just translate my son's homework that night. She translated our whole family from broken and disconnected to whole and loving. Sometimes the most valuable resources are hiding in plain sight, and all we have to do is pay attention. And in a sidebar interview, Ethan, who was now 10 years old, said, "My dad used to be sad all the time and work too much, but now he smiles every day and plays with us and takes us on adventures. Mama Kemi taught him how to be happy, and she taught me that families can look different but love the same," Nia added. "I used to worry about money all the time because I saw how hard my mama worked just to pay for food and rent. Now I know that being rich isn't just about having money. We're rich because we have each other, and we take care of each other, and we dream big dreams together." The story that started with a desperate father and a crumpled homework assignment had become a testament to the power of human connection and mutual respect. It proved that love could bloom in the most unexpected places and that second chances were possible for anyone brave enough to take them. It showed that success measured in dollars was meaningless compared to success measured in relationships and personal growth and positive impact on others. But perhaps most importantly, it demonstrated that every person has value and potential, regardless of their job title or economic status. Kemi had always been intelligent and talented and capable, but she needed someone to recognize those qualities and give her a platform to use them. Marcus had always been driven and successful, but he needed someone to teach him how to balance ambition with presence, achievement with contentment. That night in the elevator had lasted less than 5 minutes, but it changed 5 lives forever. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment of genuine human connection to transform everything we thought we knew about ourselves and what we're capable of achieving. Sometimes the answer to our biggest problems is standing right in front of us, wearing a uniform we don't usually notice, or speaking with an accent we don't usually hear, or offering help from a perspective we don't usually consider. The Sterling Adebayo family continued to grow and thrive in ways that none of them could have imagined during those early days of tentative trust and cautious hope. Marcus learned that his greatest legacy wouldn't be the company he built, but the family he helped create. Kemi learned that dreams deferred aren't necessarily dreams denied, and that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Ethan learned that families can expand to include new people without diminishing the love for existing members. Nia learned that accepting help and opportunities doesn't make you weak, but gives you the strength to help others in return. And baby David grew up surrounded by siblings and parents who showed him every day that love multiplies rather than divides, when it's shared generously and authentically. The translation that brought them together was just the beginning of a much larger conversation about what it means to truly understand and support each other across all the boundaries that usually keep people apart. It was a conversation that continued every day in small acts of kindness and big gestures of commitment and quiet moments of appreciation for the miracle of finding your people in a world that can feel vast and lonely and disconnected.